Now, carbonara is one of the most popular pastas in Australia. We know that, but it's quite interesting because its origins are sort of a bit disputed, because first of all, they think the people in Rome who cleaned the chimneys, and because they had soot all over them, they called the pasta carbonara, and it supposedly was their speciality because it had quite a lot of pepper in it, so it had a little pepper through it. Right. The other thought, which I like better, I have to be honest, is after World War II, the Americans had quite a lot of eggs and they had a lot of bacon, and they gave it to the locals, the Italians, who made them the pasta with bacon and eggs. And when they took it back, because they really enjoyed it, they took it back to America and they then added cream. But cream is actually a no-go in carbonara. You do not add cream. I'm going to do supposedly the original one. Supposedly, because it's a bit like that, isn't it? Anyway, no cream in this version, just eggs and bacon. Anyway, it doesn't really matter because it's a bloody wonderful pasta and it tastes good, doesn't it? And that's the main thing. First of all, we've got pancetta, and I've just sliced it. Just have a look there, James. See, I've just sliced it in, I suppose you'd call those lardons. Taken the hard crust off it and just sliced it up like that. So there's a few bits and pieces there. I suppose 1 by 2 centimetre thick piece. And I use some good olive oil, which is absolutely essential for any pasta, to be honest. And I just add a dollop of butter. That just adds a bit of colour because the olive oil adds the flavour. And to that we then add pancetta, and we cook that until it's reasonably crisp. And then we're just going to pull it out. So keep an eye on it. You don't want it burnt, but you want to get a bit of colour to it. All right, looking pretty good, guys. Let's just rip that off. And what I'm just going to do is pull that out. Keep the oil. You can drain it into a little colander if you like, or a little sieve, but you do want to keep the oil behind because it's got those lovely pancetta juices. We will just grab our pot. Just be a little careful because it is boiling water. And to that I've added quite a bit of salt. And the whole aim of cooking pasta is what you do, don't break it up, just add the spaghetti. The whole aim for this now is to bring it back to the boil as fast as possible. That will stop it sticking together. And what you do every now and then is just separate it a bit. Now, let's start talking about the sauce. This is actually interesting. 2 egg yolks, small egg yolks, and 1 whole egg, to which I add a couple of spoons of pasta water. We just whisk that up. You can heat the bowl up if you like, but the main thing is I'm trying to make a sauce here that's a bit creamy, I suppose is what I'm after, without the cream. And what I've got here is some pecorino, not Parmesan, pecorino is the cheese you use for this, or the cheese of choice. And if you don't happen to have any, I suppose you could use Parmesan, but the pecorino gives a bit of a bite to it, which is lovely. So a couple of tablespoons of grated pecorino, obviously some pepper, quite a bit of pepper, remember carbon, and some salt. Not too much because the pancetta could be a bit salty. Now James just asked me why the pasta water, quite rightly so. What the Italians use, they use pasta water because it's where the starch is and it helps thicken the sauce without having to add cream or any thickening agency. See, that's clever, isn't it? So that's the reasoning behind that. So what we're now doing is we're throwing this cooked spaghetti into the pan, which has still got those pan juices, which the pancetta was in, and we're putting that pancetta. Now, I know it sounds weird because you're saying, well, you're putting the pancetta back, but the pancetta is now nice and crispy because it's drained. So we throw that around. If that is a bit dry, we then add a bit more pasta water. And we're then going to mix it in with the eggs and cheese. And of course, what will now happen is those eggs will be cooked through the heat of the pasta. So it sounds complicated, it's not. So just mix that in really, really well to cook those eggs, and once again, to thicken it. We can have a little bit more pepper there. And I hate to say it, cooking for 1, I think this is about enough for 2. This is cooking for 2 today. Bit more cheese on the top, pecorino. And there we have a really authentic carbonara. Wine, Tempranillo, that'll go brilliantly with that. Tempranillo, carbonara, pancetta, beautiful match.